Yeah, the WNBA All-Star game was this past weekend, and she made a very, very vulgar joke during said broadcast. Now, you would think if you wanted to, you could sit down as a family with your young children, maybe even probably young girls, and watch this game. And you don't expect something like this to happen. Look, when
Elle Duncan thought she could crack a crude joke during the WNBA All-Star game, and nobody would care. Wrong move. The ESPN anchor just learned that making inappropriate comments on live television comes with consequences. The backlash hit fast and hard, and now she's scrambling to defend herself. This whole mess is embarrassing that you think sports broadcasters should face consequences for making inappropriate jokes during family-friendly broadcasts. So, here we are again with another ESPN controversy, because apparently that network just can't help itself when it comes to stepping in it. This time, it's Elle Duncan, who decided that the WNBA All-Star Game was the perfect time to make a crude joke that had absolutely no business being on television during a sporting event.
All right. Well, again, we hope it gets a little bit more competitive because, like a girls' trip to Cancun right now, there's no D. It's a 22-point game for Team Collier. That's a walk-off. Sabrina Ionescu, there she is from the four-point circle. Second half action from Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Tips after this. Al, you're in time.
Let's get one thing straight right off the bat. This isn't about being overly sensitive or not being able to take a joke. This is about basic professional standards and understanding your audience. When you're broadcasting a major sporting event that families are watching, you don't make crude sexual references. Period. It's really that simple. But somehow, Elle Duncan missed that memo. The joke itself was completely unnecessary and, frankly, pretty stupid. During the WNBA All-Star Game broadcast, Duncan made a comment about there being no D in reference to defense, but clearly intended it as a sexual innuendo. Real classy stuff for a primetime sports broadcast that kids are watching. The fact that she thought this was appropriate shows either terrible judgment or complete disregard for broadcasting standards. What makes this whole situation even more ridiculous is Duncan's response to criticism. Instead of just acknowledging that maybe it wasn't the best choice of words for that particular moment, she's doubling down and acting like people are overreacting. She went on some radio show trying to defend herself by saying she's been making similar jokes for years. Well, congratulations, Elle. That doesn't make it better.
Hands of young children, right? Now, we know a lot of young girls, a lot of children have been drawn to the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark. I believe it is the singular reason she is so popular because the traditional family unit is now interested in WNBA basketball. All right? The nuclear family, let's call it, right? Dad, mom, kids, sit down, turn on the game, watch Caitlin Clark. These little girls are wild about Caitlin Clark. Well, there was a lot of fallout around Elle Duncan's joke, and we'll listen to it in a minute. And let me just keep it real. Her dick joke. During the WNBA broadcast.
The timing of this joke is what really gets me. The WNBA has been experiencing incredible growth lately, largely thanks to players like Caitlin Clark bringing in new audiences. These new fans include families and young girls who are getting excited about women's basketball for the first time. And right when the league is trying to build this broader appeal, you got broadcasters making inappropriate jokes during their biggest showcase events. Duncan tried to claim that people were only upset because she's a woman making the joke. That's complete nonsense, and she knows it. If a male broadcaster had made a similar crude comment during the Super Bowl or any major sporting event, he'd probably be looking for a new job right about now. The standard should be the same regardless of gender. And those standards say, you don't make sexual innuendos during family sports programming. The real problem here is ESPN's complete inconsistency when it comes to holding their employees accountable. They've fired or disciplined people for much less offensive comments in the past, but somehow Duncan gets to make crude jokes on live television and then defend herself afterward like she's the victim. The double standards are pretty obvious to anyone paying attention.
The Cancun joke is, I feel like whenever I say something, it's like sometimes a reintroduction for some people who clearly don't know me or my work over the last 10 years. You don't have to watch ESPN Sports Center to watch a WNBA All-Star game. We don't care about your work. We don't care about what you've done. Hey, God, get over yourself. Quote, I'm like, bro, I said on air one time that if you celebrate too early, it's called premature I'm jackulation.
What's particularly frustrating is that Duncan seems to think her history at ESPN gives her some kind of free pass to say whatever she wants. She mentioned that she's been making similar comments for 10 years. Well, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe ESPN should have been paying more attention to what their anchors were saying all along instead of letting things slide until it becomes a public controversy.
And Outkick dropped an article this morning, and I didn't even realize this. Outkick has a former WNBA announcer and a former Northwestern basketball player, a woman, working as their editor. And she has come out and made some comments about this. She crushes Elle Duncan into dust. And she's bringing up something very valid. And look, the WNBA couldn't grow all these years for one reason and one reason only. And this is what's made these players so angry.
The WNBA has worked incredibly hard to build its brand and attract new audiences. The league has been growing steadily, and events like the All-Star Game are crucial for showcasing the talent and excitement of women's professional basketball. When broadcasters make inappropriate comments during these marquee events, it undermines all of that hard work and gives people reasons to tune out. Young girls who look up to WNBA players deserve better than having to hear crude jokes during games. Parents who want to share their love of basketball with their daughters shouldn't have to worry about inappropriate content during what should be family-friendly programming. These are basic expectations for sports broadcasting, not unreasonable demands. That Duncan's attempt to minimize the situation by comparing it to late-night SportsCenter shows completely misses the point. There's a huge difference between making a questionable joke during a random late-night show and doing it during a major live sporting event that's being promoted as must-see television. The audience is different. The stakes are different, and the standards should be different, too. The criticism Duncan received wasn't just from random viewers, either. People within the sports media industry, including former WNBA broadcasters, called out the comment as inappropriate and unprofessional. When your own colleagues are saying you cross a line, maybe it's time to listen instead of getting defensive. What really gets me is how Duncan seemed surprised that people were bothered by her comment. Did she really think that making a sexual joke during a primetime sports broadcast wouldn't generate any negative reaction? Either she's completely out of touch with her audience, or she just doesn't care about professional standards. Neither option reflects well on her or ESPN. The whole situation also highlights how ESPN has changed over the years. There was a time when the network focused primarily on sports and maintained certain standards for their broadcasts. Now, it seems like anything goes as long as it generates attention, regardless of whether it's appropriate for the audience or the context. Duncan's defense strategy of playing the victim and claiming people don't understand her sense of humor is getting old. We understand it just fine. It's inappropriate for setting. Making crude jokes during family programming isn't edgy or clever. It's just unprofessional. There's a time and place for everything, and a live sports broadcast watched by families isn't a time or place for sexual innuendos. The impact on the WNBA itself is something that Duncan apparently didn't consider. The league is trying to build something special and attract diverse audiences. When broadcasters make inappropriate comments during their showcase events, it can turn off potential fans and undermine the league's efforts to grow. Duncan's selfishness in prioritizing her own comedy over the league's interests is pretty telling. ESPN's handling of the situation says a lot about their priorities, too. Instead of addressing the inappropriate comment and maybe issuing some kind of statement about broadcast standards, they're letting Duncan go on other shows to defend herself. This sends a message that they're fine with this kind of content as long as it doesn't generate too much backlash. The comparison to other ESPN personalities who have faced consequences for much less significant comments is pretty stark. Some people get fired for expressing political opinions or making comments that offend certain groups, while others get to make crude sexual jokes on live television and then defend themselves publicly. The inconsistency is impossible to ignore. What bothers me most about Duncan's response is a lack of accountability. A simple acknowledgement that the comment wasn't appropriate for that setting would have gone a long way. Instead, she's acting like the criticism is unreasonable and that people should just accept crude humor during family sports programming. That's not how professionalism works. The broader issue here is about maintaining standards in sports broadcasting. When networks allow their personalities to say whatever they want without consequences, it degrades the entire viewing experience. Sports should be something that brings people together, not something that makes families uncomfortable about watching together. Duncan's comment also reflects poorly on the progress that women's sports broadcasting has made. Female sports anchors and commentators have worked hard to be taken seriously and establish credibility in their field. When someone makes inappropriate jokes during major broadcasts, it can reinforce negative stereotypes about women in sports media. The timing couldn't have been worse for the WNBA either. The All-Star Game was supposed to be a celebration of the league's growth and success. Instead, part of the conversation afterward focused on an inappropriate comment from a broadcaster. That's not the kind of attention the league needs or deserves. ESPN's decision to let this slide without any apparent consequences also sets a dangerous precedent. If broadcasters know they can make inappropriate comments without facing any real punishment, what's to stop them from pushing the boundaries even further in the future? Standards exist for a reason, and they need to be enforced consistently. The fact that Duncan has been making similar comments for years without consequences suggests that ESPN either wasn't paying attention or didn't care. Both possibilities are concerning for a network that broadcasts family programming and claims to maintain professional standards. That Duncan's attempt to frame the criticism as people not understanding her sense of humor is particularly grating. We understand it perfectly. It's just not appropriate for the context. Comedy has its place, but that place isn't during live sports broadcasts that families are watching together. The whole situation could have been avoided if Duncan had simply thought before speaking. Is this comment appropriate for the audience? Is this the right time and place for this kind of humor? Would this reflect well on me, my network, and the league we're covering? The answers to all of these questions should have been obvious. What's really disappointing is that Duncan apparently learned nothing from this experience. Instead of reflecting on whether her comment was appropriate, she's focused on defending herself and dismissing the criticism. That kind of attitude suggests that similar incidents are likely to happen again in the future. The impact on young viewers is something that seems to be completely lost on Duncan. Kids who are watching the WNBA All-Star Games shouldn't have to hear sexual innuendos from the broadcasters. Parents shouldn't have to worry about inappropriate content during what should be wholesome family entertainment. These are basic expectations that apparently need to be spelled out. ESPN's tolerance for this kind of behavior also raises questions about their other programming. If they're okay with crude jokes during major sporting events, what else are they allowing that might not be appropriate? The lack of consistent standards makes it hard to trust that they're maintaining appropriate content across their various shows and broadcasts. The whole mess just reinforces why so many people have lost respect for ESPN over the years. When a network prioritizes controversy and attention over professionalism and appropriate content, it inevitably leads to situations like this. Duncan's comment and the network's response are symptoms of a larger problem with their standards and culture. Looking at this from a business perspective, ESPN's approach doesn't make much sense either. The WNBA is experiencing tremendous growth in bringing in new advertisers and sponsors who want to be associated with clean, family-friendly content. When broadcasters make inappropriate jokes during major events, it creates liability issues and potentially drives away the very sponsors that make these broadcasts profitable. That Duncan's apparent inability to read the room is also concerning from a professional standpoint. Part of being a good broadcaster is understanding your audience and adapting your commentary accordingly. The fact that she thought a crude sexual joke was appropriate during a family-oriented sports broadcast suggests either poor training or poor judgment on her part. The ripple effect of this incident extends beyond just Duncan and ESPN too. Other broadcasters are probably watching the situation closely to see what kind of consequences, if any, Duncan faces. If there are no real repercussions, it sends a message that similar behavior is acceptable. If there are consequences, it might make other broadcasters think twice before making inappropriate comments. The social media reaction to Duncan's comment and subsequent defense has been overwhelmingly negative, which shows that most people understand the difference between appropriate and inappropriate content for family programming. The fact that Duncan seems oblivious to this reaction suggests she's either not paying attention to feedback or doesn't care what people think. What's particularly ironic is that Duncan works for a network that has made diversity and inclusion major priorities in recent years. Making crude sexual jokes during family programming doesn't exactly align with creating an inclusive viewing environment for all audiences. The hypocrisy is pretty glaring when you think about it. So, there you have it. Another ESPN broadcaster thinking they can say whatever they want without consequences. Elle Duncan learned the hard way that inappropriate jokes during family programming don't go over well. What's your take on this whole mess? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more sports commentary that actually makes sense.